Welcome, everyone, to the Be Freaking Awesome podcast. My name is Angela Belford, and I am one of your hosts, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Sami Kennison, and we are going to talk about hard conversations.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum. It does always feel like we need like a little bit of something.
Little sound effect.
In that transition. Maybe that'll be season 3. We'll get a little sound effect action. Anyway, so Sami, we probably have to start. We're gonna jump right in because we've been talking about this for the last 10 minutes. So we had to finally start recording and stop
wasting all the good content on
brainstorming. Yeah. So let's start with what is communication.
So the technical definition, or sort of like, the more in practice definition?
I don't know. You got a major in this. So
okay. There's this whole communication model you see, and there are senders and there's receivers. There's a message, there's noise, there's feedback. Let's talk about all that. Just kidding. Anybody can Google the communication model. It'll pull up a nice little chart for you and you can see. I think that communication is interacting with others, sharing what's inside ourselves and learning what they have to share themselves. I think. I don't know. Maybe we'll play around with that definition.
So sharing what's inside, I'm going to have to pull up the transcript to get that back again. Because, that's a very interpersonal communication definition, wouldn't you say?
That is true.
Yeah. Because, like I would say, higher level than that, communication is 2 parts, which you say all the time, which I know is communication model, but it's like it is sending a message and having that message received. That's actually communication.
Isn't that what I said?
No, but you said sharing who you are and learning who the other person is.
You said sharing what the message inside you or something like that. We'll have to go check the transcript, run it back, replay, rewind.
Well, sharing sounded just a little less, anyway, it's fine.
A little less technical.
Yeah, no. So I love your definition, though. I mean, I'm not trying to say that I don't. I'm just trying to say, like, let's crawl, walk around here.
Okay.
I'm the girl that likes to walk into the ocean or walk into the water. I'm not a dive in cold water kind of a person. Anyway, so I'm like, woo, you jump it all in there.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick Google search tells me that the technical definition is the imparting or exchanging of information or news, or it means a means of sending or receiving information. So sending and receiving information, because both sides are communication. Even if you are not the one sending the message, you are still a part of it. So receiving the message is still a part of communication.
I agree with you.
Sending it. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's why we have to talk about the 2 parts of it, because there are times that people will say like, oh, that person isn't a good communicator. I'm like, well, are you a good listener? Are you an active listener?
Right.
Are you listening for the nuance? Are you paying attention? Do you have, because just sitting back and being like,
entertain me.
Oh my gosh. It's like as soon as I did that, I was like, this is why I got out of stand-up comedy, is because, well, let me sort of start to say that. This is why I didn't pursue stand-up comedy, because get out of sounds like I did it forever. I mean, it was 2 years, but anyway, because when you say you're a stand-up comic, then people like literally sit back and are like, make me laugh. But if you say that you're a professional development speaker, and you're going to teach them something, training something, and then they laugh for 45 minutes, they think you're brilliant. Anyway, so there is a piece of it that is the audience's responsibility. We're not actually going to talk about that today, but
communication starts with sending and receiving information. And it can get so much more deep than just that. So that's crawl. Sending information, receiving information.
Well, obviously, we're going to cover one part of communication, and you have a 4-year degree. So clearly, there can be a little more than this.
Just a smidge.
Just a smidge that we're not going to get to today.
We don't have to talk about that. I took classes that were both interpersonal communication and intrapersonal communication, AKA communication with yourself. Was literally a whole college course that I took about communicating with yourself. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different elements and sides and angles.
And we know that you're enough of a nerd that you loved that stuff.
I did. I loved group communication, family communication, business communication. I loved it all.
It's so magical when you can find a degree that teaches you the thing you already love a lot. Anyway, okay. So, Sami, you have spent a lot of time the last few weeks. You're prepping for an upcoming project, which we'll talk about later. So you've been spending a lot of time thinking about this communication. Any new insights you want to share on this journey that'll kind of set up this hard conversation?
Yeah, I think the one that it's exciting to think about, and I'm still kind of noodling with it to make sure that is this exactly right. But I think that communication is the bridge between people and processes. We talk about in business that both of those pieces are super important. You cannot completely abandon people just to have the most efficient process. And on the flip side, you cannot just let the people run however they want to run without any type of process, because eventually that will actually hurt the people without any process if you're just wandering aimlessly and every project is different and there's not really a clear path of how to complete things. But it is communicating that helps us figure out where is the right balance. When are we pushing people too hard? When are we leaning too hard on the process? When does the process need to be flexible? A lot of that is achieved, that determination is achieved through communication. If people are not honest about how something is working for them, you can't make improvements. If people are not clear on what the instructions are, on what the process is, on how their role fits before and after them within a process, that can really hinder the situation, make things less efficient, make things less enjoyable. But I think communication is the bridge, and how you can make optimal processes that serve the business and people at both times. So this is where I think I've still playing with it. It's open to challenge, open to be poked holes in, but I really like the idea, the concept.
Well, because you immediately brought to mind for me the change management, which is an area that you and I've kind of played around with, talked about, diving into, because change management is, the improving processes, but also communicating efficiently through that process. So what you were just saying for sure applies to changing and improving and evolving. And perhaps maybe that we have a core belief, you and I share a core belief that a process needs to be reviewed on a regular basis to make sure that it is serving the business and people that we kind of, I'll just own this. I abhor the answer. That's how we've always done it.
Oh, same. I was just about to bring that up to be like, it is the one thing that will drive me through the roof faster than anything else is, because we've always done it this way.
Right. If you want to tell me we tried 7 different ways and this was the most effective way when we tried 7 different ways 4 years ago, and we haven't found a need, we haven't seen a need since then to improve upon it, fantastic.
If you want to tell me we don't have capacity right now because we are overworked to evaluate where this needs to be better, great. That's even better. That isn't.
We've been too busy. Yeah, we've been too busy to even be able to think about how to improve the process. That's fine. But there is a passivity and a willingness to accept mediocrity to the answer, because that's how we've always done it.
And there's an honesty to those other ones, because if you're too busy to have evaluated it, so you're doing it because this is what we have been doing and it works fine enough, even though it's not great, I can be honest with myself as to the reason I've not evaluated this. I'm not doing this because we've always done it. I'm doing this because I don't have capacity to figure out the better way right now.
Or even honest. It didn't feel broken. It's been working. Now what's funny is that people will tell me it's been working and they're miserable and they're stressed out. And I'm like, then maybe something isn't working. I mean,
you have a different definition of working than I do.
Yeah. We could totally go up on process management, and we will not. We'll put a pin in that for another episode because, man, after doing software development for 8 years, I can riff on process improvement.
So
we not.
Yeah, we'll talk about hard conversations today.
Yes, today we're going to talk about hard conversations, or we are talking about hard conversations. And when you begin to talk to somebody about, is this process working? It actually is a pretty good context for us to unpack kind of hard conversations. It feels, talking about it in the context of process, I think could allow us to learn some things that then when we take those learnings and apply them to hard conversations where they're more related to people, we can kind of build up our skill set and get some reps talking about a process, which is a little less emotional and personal, yes, than jumping right into. Oh, that's an interesting thought for team building, to let's design a process and let's talk about what process before we learn how to tell each other, when you say this thing, it hurts my feelings. You know what I mean? I've never thought about that. Anyway, so hard conversation. How do you define a hard conversation?
Gosh, I think it's anything that probably makes your heart race a little bit thinking about it or in the moment. Anything that, it could be any conversation really that activates your nervous system in some way. For a lot of people, that's different. There are different scale or spectrum of hard conversations.
I'm glad you said makes your heart race, because not everybody has the lingo. We talk the lingo a lot around here of activate your nervous system. I think some people might call it, they get triggered by it. They feel uncomfortable with it.
If your palms get kind of sweaty, or you get goosebumps, you get a little, or
you want to run away.
Yeah, that feeling. I'll tell you, I will freeze. That's the other thing. Literally, I noticed in my body. You and I actually had a conversation yesterday where I felt it. I noticed it. You challenged me in just the right way. And I felt my whole body just go completely still. And I was uncomfortable at the moment. It was you can't move. How do you stay safe? It was weird. It was weird to be in the moment and also notice what was literally happening, the physical sensations of try not to move. And so I had to move your fingers, okay, move your arms, work the movement back into your body. Walked myself through that so that I could then engage more in the place where appropriately challenging me to become better. And it was great.
What's interesting is that as the other half of that communication, I didn't notice that. So I'm going, ooh, which part? What was it? I know we were having a pretty good banter, but it wasn't confrontational. I didn't feel.
It was the part where I told you I've been trying to outrun my emotions, and you said, "Is that really the best? Maybe we invite it to have coffee with us and to sit with us." And I was like, "No, deer in the headlights. What do you mean you want me to sit with my emotions like we talk about? I don't want to do that." And it was good.
I did see that. I did see that freeze moment because I was like, when did I appropriately challenge you that you froze? Anyway,
it was not I wouldn't actually call that a hard conversation necessarily. I think that was something where a good friend was saying, "Hey, Sammy, do you notice that this is what you're doing?" And maybe
you actually told me what I'm really doing is trying to outrun my
think I said those exact
you
words.
did. You exactly said. I think we could pull up the Otter transcript from our meeting to say, I'm trying to just outrun my insecurity. That's what you said. And so then when I run out of steam and I get tired, then it catches up with me. And the way you're describing it was a little bit like the process people saying like, I don't know, it's working for me. And I'm just like, your definition of working for you is different than my definition of working for you. That's all hilarious.
So since we're here, let's go ahead and break this down just a little bit as a conversation that could have been hard, but was not very hard for either of us. I mean, like, it was a little hard for me to be like, oh yeah, I should sit down with my emotions. I'm not going to deny that. I'm like, oh gosh, that was like a lot. But the conversation between you and I was not the hard part. And some things that I think you and I have built into our relationship is, one, we have a lot of trust. I think the trusting belief is that each one of us is looking out for the best in each other. And if I push you and you push me, there is a baseline belief that this is for our good, that we are not trying to hurt each other. We are not trying to be selfish. We're not trying to get something
for better, get something for myself. No, I feel like if I'm pushing you or if you're pushing me, I'll just, from my perspective, you're also providing the safety net if I fall.
Yeah.
Which is huge, and I'm not saying that I think somebody could construe and go, of course a mom's going to feel like that. No, about her daughter to want to be the catch. But I feel like you also do that for me, like where you will like challenge what I'm thinking and like go on, walk out onto the tightrope. And I know the safety net's there if I like lose my crap and start bawling. So,
right. And I think that that baseline belief, we are here to help each other. Some of that can be summed up in the idea of assuming positive intent, which with our relationship, because we are so close, it is more than just assuming positive intent. Like, I thoroughly know that our intentions for each other are good. I think that we also have practice, and because we have such a long relationship, like we have practiced hard conversations, and we have had hard conversations that have not gone well. Like,
they've gone very poorly.
I think that just to let everybody know who listens, like we sound, it sounds like we could always get along and everything is perfect and wonderful. We could talk about, arguments we had 15 years ago when I was in high school. We could talk about arguments we had, 15 days ago, like whatever. Like we don't always get along, and that's not necessarily good content for the podcast. So of course we're going to be like, we're not just going to like, all right, we're having an argument, let's record it so everybody can hear. But
people have enough of their own arguments. They don't need to listen to ours.
No,
it is true. Yeah, it is true. We don't have, I can talk about like the emotional processing that I help people do, where I kind of encourage them to like feel their feelings. And I talk about that the very first person I ever tried this new idea on with Sami, which were painful initial experience, excruciatingly painful. Like I got in my car and I drove across town because I'd pushed too hard, too fast. I
literally felt so much emotion that I vomited. Like it was like when they talk about like spewing your emotions everywhere, I distinctly remember like, oh my gosh, it's so intense. And then I threw up, like, which is kind of humorous now, but like I'm on the phone also, like set the phone down. And then she's like,
I was there by then.
Oh, you were there?
I was already there by then. Yeah, because you were like, I'm just so afraid of disappointing everyone. I go, no, you're really just afraid of disappointing yourself. And I was like, and you were like, I'm like, tell me where you feel it in your body. I feel it in my throat. And I'm like, yeah, you're literally gagging yourself with your own disappointment. Too harsh, too strong, too much. Like, okay, dial it back, newbie, brand new girl that read a book and thought she'd try it. Does this shit actually work? Oh, sorry. What's so redemptive for me the redemption of that story, while I totally bombed the execution, was when you, the next day, like, I could visibly see the results. The amount of self-doubt that you had for the next 3 days around that topic went to almost zero. And I remember you having a conversation with a friend of yours that's a therapist that you said, damn it, I hate it when my mom's right. And so I was like, ooh, okay, so I'm onto something, but I got to improve this style and the skill. I mean, it was
the methodology is not to get everybody to vomit.
I've never gotten anybody else to that point.
Good. What a marker of success. Nobody else has thrown up while feeling their feelings.
But it was effective.
If you have a lot of feelings built up and bottled up for a while, you might just, sometimes like when you're really sick or like you have a migraine, you're like, you know what, I just kind of want to get it over with and just like throw up already so I can feel better. I mean, maybe that's the approach, is like just throw up already.
Okay, so I always have these like little thoughts going on in my brain, like during the podcast of like, man, I'm imagining, like, I have friends that'll tell me about or text me while they're listening to the podcast. One time I was talking to a friend of mine and I texted him while he was listening to the podcast. Anyway, so I'm just imagining that. But now it's like exponential, because now you're pulling out snippets and making them into reels that get 1,000 views in a day or 2 or 3. And I'm like, oh my gosh, way more terrifying. Because now somebody doesn't have to invest a whole 40 minutes to hear this. They could just get a reel. Anyway, sorry for the sound bite. Okay, so we've had hard conversations. We've practiced a lot. We've stayed in it. We've leaned into it. We've both made each other cry, and we keep coming back.
So not everybody's going to have a hard conversation with, in such a long, trusting relationship.
Right.
I think a lot of our hard conversations are not with long, trusting relationships. So I still think they're important. I would venture to hypothesize. I was going to say, like, make a definitive statement, and now I'm going to make it way more wishy-washy. Venture to hypothesize.
Own it.
If there is a hard conversation that you are avoiding, stop avoiding it. Eat the frog, get it over with, throw up already, have the hard conversation.
Okay, well, that sounds all easy for you, Miss Thang, who has a degree in this. But what are some ways that somebody can eat the frog, have the hard conversation? What are some things that we can do to mitigate the risk? Because we talked about, creating the safety net, and, not everybody has the relationship to be able to trust the total mess up. Perhaps.
So I do think that there's a little bit of the pros and cons. I'm a big pro-con list person. What are the risks of not having the conversation? What are the risks of having the conversation? If you don't have the conversation, will your job get better? Will your relationship with your family improve? Will whatever situation that is not ideal for you, will it go away on its own? Maybe. If you do have the conversation, do you think you're going to get fired by having a hard conversation with your boss? Do you think that your family is going to do something really dramatic? They might react really big. And is there a chance of it getting better without doing that? I think a lot of times of the, if I don't put my name into the hat, or, I don't play the game, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's what it is. That's the quote I was trying to find. Right now, nothing's better. If you do something and it doesn't work out, nothing's better. You still tried. Like, you still made an effort.
Yeah, there's in Be Freaking Awesome, I talk about Jack Canfield's definition of rejection, or concept of rejection, which is basically if you want to ask somebody out, you don't have a date now. If you ask them out, you don't have a date then. I don't know it's really true that there's no risk. I think there's a way. What you're saying, what I'm picking up from what you're saying is that there's ways to mitigate the risk by making a list and telling yourself, okay, if the worst case happens, can I survive that? And can you survive if you lose your job? How likely is it that worst case thing is going to happen? If I have this conversation, my husband might divorce me. How likely is that to happen? Yes, it is possible. Would you survive? How likely? Those types of things. So I think for me, there's some mitigating risk that you're talking about by making the list of what you need to talk about and having those hard conversations. I think there's also, you mentioned a little bit earlier about honesty, because there is an element where hopefully this relationship is such that you can say, I want to have this conversation. I'm really scared that if we have this conversation, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to, and I've been a boss, and I'm telling you, from an HR perspective, unless you just have somebody that is completely not following HR protocol of they should put you on probation and you should not be fired for things you're not doing, that's probably not that likely. And if you're in a marriage where you can't even say, I'm afraid that this will cause us to get a divorce, that's information.
Yes, I was going to say, if you have a job where a boss would fire you for bringing up feedback, is that the job situation and environment you want to be in?
Right.
If you have a marriage where there's not enough trust to say, I'm afraid this is going to happen, can we have this hard conversation? There's some skills that need to be built to improve things. Yeah. And I don't want to come across as though I'm saying hard conversations are without risk. A step sort of that relates to all of this is really understand what it is that you want to get out of the conversation. What is to be gained? So different than what's the risk if I do or don't? What is the ideal outcome? What is the thing that would happen at the end of this? And establish that. You can say out loud, I want to have this conversation so that when we get together at Thanksgiving, we can all have a really good time. I want to have this conversation so that when I go to team meeting and this one person continues to mistreat me, I'm not going to feel so alone and so frustrated at these interactions. I don't know, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Establish that with the person you're going to have the conversation with to say, this is my goal. I want to make this very specific thing better.
Well, you got to back it up, because I think that's part of your pros and cons list that's that next step, where so many times people are like, I'm so frustrated with whatever, I'm going to talk to this person. Okay, what do you want to get out of it? I think sometimes people don't even know for themselves,
right,
what they want to get out of it. And
I thought this person's presentation was annoying and boring. Great. What would you like to happen differently? Well, I don't know. Okay, then what is to be gained from having the conversation? What is there to gain? If you want to say, hey, I think we are wasting our time in meetings, and this meeting could have been an email, and that would help us increase productivity and not spend so much time, great. That's your outcome. But if you just want to say, I think you suck, and I wanted you to know about it, and I'm having this hard, honest conversation with you to tell you that you suck, that's not helpful.
It's not helpful. And even if you want to talk about the household chores, or, in a marriage situation, it's I want to have a conversation because I want to feel like I have an equal partner in this marriage. And right now I don't. I was reading a book, which I can't even believe that I don't have that on the podcast episode list yet. This book is awesome. Indistractable. Side note. Anyway, but he was saying that he felt like he was a really good sharing the work kind of person with his wife. He was like, no, I mean, I'm a 30-something guy. I'm attuned. And he said, that was my perception of myself. I talked to my wife and she's like, you're kidding, right? I do like 70 to 75 and you do like 25 to 30. And he was like, wait, what? Well, I told you if you need help, ask. And he goes, what I found out is that was even putting more load on her because now she has to mentally figure out how I can help her. And so they set aside time and made a list of absolutely everything on their household chores. And then they together figured out who was going to do what. And it was like, I mean, they have kids. And so he's like, well, just tell me to help with the kids. And it's like, no, I shouldn't have to tell you to help with the kids because they're your kids too. Why do I have to carry that mental load? And so he initiated the hard conversation, thinking that it wasn't going to be a hard conversation, which is what I thought was interesting. And there was some statistics that he shared about marriages that have a more equal domestic sharing are stronger, happier marriages. So that could be your outcome is I want a strong marriage. I want a happy marriage. I want to feel like we're equal partners in here. Can we talk about this?
I think another reason that people avoid hard conversations is because they don't want to acknowledge the thing within themselves that they might be contributing to the problem. So, for example, you might know you're the person who's not contributing enough and maybe you don't want to. You're like, I'm avoiding this, so I want to avoid the whole conversation, or I don't know, whatever it might be. There's an element of self-awareness with communication and with good communication. If you are unwilling to do the emotional work in yourself, to recognize your triggers, to recognize your areas that you're insecure, to recognize your needs, you will never be able to surpass a certain level of communication if you're unwilling to figure out your own self and evaluate where you are. That one I'm not wishy-washy on, not a hypothesis. I stand firm in that I think that if you're unwilling to build and grow in that way, you will stay stagnant. So those are hard conversations. This is a taste.
Why are we talking
of thoughts?
You are working on a project. Tell us about that.
So I am working on a course to help people have better hard conversations. It'll be an online course. People can go through the different modules. I think it's 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And on March 16th, we're actually going to have a webinar where we sort of do like a free webinar, just kind of a taste of things. And we're going to be talking about whether or not you should have the hard conversation. Should I have this hard conversation? And I'll really go in deeper onto some different sides, different reasons, breaking down your pro-con list and helping evaluate through those different decision points. And then the course itself is actually going to talk through really 3 elements of things. What's your mindset and your approach? How are you bringing yourself to the conversation? How do you plan the conversation intentionally? What are different things you can do to help set up the conversation so that it can be more successful? And then how do you react and go forward after the hard conversation? So those are sort of the 3 things. So if this is something that you want to learn more about, you can go to our website, befreakingawesome.com, be the letter B, freaking awesome. And there'll be more information there.
Fantastic. This has been a great conversation, and I look forward to exploring this more in the webinar and the course. You may not know this, but in addition to wherever you're listening to this podcast, we are also now on YouTube. And if you subscribe to our email list, you will get kind of some of the behind the scenes, a little bit of extra information. So in the email that comes out every week, we would love, love, love to have you as a subscriber. Wherever you are, you can rate the podcast. That will really help us to grow this. If you find this useful, we would love to hear your ratings, your feedback. And feel free to send us comments and emails. We're on all the places: Facebook, Insta, YouTube, email. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a freaking awesome day.